to work with at an intimate level. And for what it's worth, Department, the reason that I'm here tonight is I happen to be chairman of Dr. Bob's, the managing trustees, and it's a great honor and privilege, and I may have skipped that earlier. And also, Mari, thank you for talking about Dr. Bob and Bill, and I heard the reason that they God picked those two is because nobody else would get along with those two damn Yankees like that from Vermont. I hope nobody's from Vermont. I think I can get away with that one. So, and to clear up folklore too, I think Smitty, Dr. Bob's son, said if it was up to Bill, he would have franchised Alcoholics Anonymous. If it was up to Dr. Bob, it would have never left West Akron. But here we are tonight, and all alive and well. But the gentleman that I'm going to introduce now, like I said, I've had the pleasure to be, like I said, intimate. He's on the board with myself and other board members, and he's helped me through some very challenging times as we have grown through the house. He's become a very good friend of mine, and I can go to Kent with anything and everything, and I really, really want to give a Akron/New York welcome for Kent Coleman from Sandusky, Ohio.
My grandmother always said things go better when you pray first. Let's do that. Heavenly Father, use me tonight as an instrument of thy will. Speak through me, so whatever results that you desire here tonight will be accomplished in all things. Thy will, not mine, be done. Amen. What I love most about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love everything about Alcoholics Anonymous, is the simplicity of it. There's a line in our book, in the chapter Working with Others, that bottom lines the simplicity of this whole thing for me. And that line simply says this: remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people, it is dependent upon his relationship with God. The single most important fact as I stand here tonight, and the only reason I'm standing here tonight or anywhere else, is that I got a power in my life today that I choose to call God, who does for me one day at a time what I could never do for myself. If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? Why should I? I establish and grow in that relationship through living, not memorizing, analyzing, or discussing, but through living to the best of my ability, which is never perfect, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous as outlined by the founders in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Let me assure everybody in here tonight within the sound of my voice, left to my own devices, I would surely have destroyed myself years ago. That prayer reminds me of two things that I believe are vital and crucial to me staying here. First and foremost, the real reason I'm on Long Island tonight is to do God's will, not mine. And it also serves to remind me that He is in charge here tonight. And as always, thank God, I am not. Good evening. My name is Kent Coleman. I'm an alcoholic. My parents raised a mannerable young man. I want to demonstrate that. I want to thank Richard Allen for the invitation. I want to thank all the volunteers here on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Dr. Bob's home. I am overwhelmed by what I've seen here today. See, I'm not a Smith-Wilson guy either. Harmon just alluded to the fact they were put together, I believe, by divine grace, and they were the perfect complement to begin something that started in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, that has spread almost literally to every corner of the earth. And to be a part of this, and I have the great privilege of doing things like this pretty much every weekend. This is special. This is special. And I shall always remember this. What an honor and a privilege. And I don't ever want to get to the point where this just becomes normal to me. I'm more excited today to be a member of the life-saving, life-changing, life-giving fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous than at any other time. And I've been here for a while. And I just want to say thank you. I want to thank Mari. we get family in here. And my mom been gone a while. And I got some moms in AA, and you just got done hearing one of them who love me and care for me as my life continues to unfold in this journey of recovery. And what we heard here tonight, what a blessing to have Mari in my life. And I want to thank Mari for carrying the message tonight. I want to talk a minute to the new people here tonight. No, I remember what it was like to be new in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I walked into my first AA meeting, Mari talked about it. They call this a disease of denial. For me, it was a disease of ignorance. I didn't know anything about any of this. No, when I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I saw two very distinct groups of people. Let's talk about group one. Group one was in and out, in and out, in and out. Every time they came back in from being out, they looked worse than the last time they came back in from being out. They talked of restless, irritable, and discontented, terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. I ain't seen nobody go out there and come back in here passing out $50 bills and driving a BMW and talk about how good it was out there. We'll call them group one. And then there was group two. And if you've been here any amount of time this afternoon, you have seen group two in action. Shaking hands, passing out the newsletters at the door, volunteering at the tables. You see them at your local meeting, don't you? And at your home group, making coffee, greeting people. They talk about God, big book, steps, spirituality, enjoying life, and helping others. We'll call them group two. Now, I am no rocket scientist, as my story will prove. But it sure looked to me like the people in group two had a heck of a better deal than the people in group one. Right? So I have to ask myself, what is it that the people in group two have in common that the people in group one don't? Well, there certainly was some commonality in group two. First off, they had something called a sponsor. Now, when I showed up here, like I said, I didn't walk in here and automatically know all this stuff. Thank God for the longtime members of Alcoholics Anonymous who greeted me when I got here, who never talked down to a guy who was already feeling down, who never made me feel stupid or unwanted, but who simply shared with me the things that had been shared with them. A sponsor. I used to play softball for Cronin's Tavern. They was our sponsor. They gave us free beer and clothes. I thought, well, maybe AA ain't so bad, right? And he sent me down and he told me what a sponsor was. You told me that a sponsor is somebody who has working knowledge and experience with the 12 steps as outlined by the founders in the big book, who is willing to sit down with me and share with me the program of recovery, page by page out of that book. And just as importantly, or even maybe more importantly, is a living demonstration of those principles in their life, who will show me what my life can be like if I do what they do. And they told me that's what a sponsor was. I have sponsorship in AA today. I'm sponsored by Bob D. in Las Vegas with the continued spiritual guidance of Bill F. in Lorain, Ohio, and Ken B. in Parham, Ohio. Bill got 50 years, Kenny got 40, Bob got 34. That's 124 years of active, continuous sobriety that is at my disposal on a daily basis, if I choose to use it. To our new friends here, I want to share something with you. Having a sponsor is a great thing. Being sponsorable is even better. I'm a guy who works intensively with other alcoholics. I sponsor guys all over the States. I sponsor guys in Canada. I sponsor guys in Europe. I'm a guy who works intensively with other alcoholics. A guy asked me recently, Ken, how many guys do you sponsor? I said, about half of them. But ain't that about the truth, right? The only things that have benefited me in Alcoholics Anonymous have come from things I've done, not from things that I've known. Not from things that I've known. I like to do something sometime. I think I do it here and don't feel pressured to participate, but I want to do it anyway, and I got a reason for doing it. Would everybody that's in this auditorium tonight who would be willing to sponsor a new person in AA, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. If you knew and you ain't got a sponsor, I just hooked you up. No one ever need leave an AA meeting without the benefit of sponsorship. Everybody laughs when I do that, but I want to share something with you. I remember what it's like to be new. See, when I came here, I didn't know if you had 10 years or 10 minutes. Nor did I know if you would be bothered with somebody like me who didn't even feel like they deserved any help. So if you're new here tonight, The help that you need just identified itself. What you do with that piece of information is up to you. It's up to you. Second thing that the people in group 2 had in common, they had something called a home group. So they said, Kent, you need to get a home group. And I said, why? And a man said to me, Kent, you ain't the most responsible guy we've seen come into AA. And you need to start learning how to be responsible and give back to this fellowship that is giving so much to you. I have a home group today. It's the Friday night Venice group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Sandusky, Ohio. It is a very, very old group. It's a group that was an Oxford group meeting that split into 2 meetings later on. What I will tell you about my home group is this. My home group ain't the best group in the world. It ain't the worst group in the world. It's just a group. One of the things my sponsor, Bill, taught me when I came to AA is it's okay to stop competing now. My entire life prior to Alcoholics Anonymous was lived on a better than or mostly less than basis in my head. And a funny thing happens when I live better than or less than, I can never be a part of. Today I'm a member of a group. Our primary purpose is to carry to the message alcoholic who still suffers. I think we do a pretty good job of that, and we have a lot of fun in the process. I'm not the best or worst alcoholic ever to come to AA. I'm just an alcoholic. There's a little guy in my town, Mark, who said, man, for once in your life, ain't it great to just be a member of the herd? Tradition 1 says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. If I consciously or unconsciously separate myself from you, I am once again on my own, and my experience will prove that on my own, I'm a dead man. And that's what I like to call the total package in Alcoholics Anonymous. Sponsorship, big book and steps, home group, and service. In my experience, because we call those the 3 legacies, in my experience, I have yet to meet an alcoholic of our type. And if you don't know what an alcoholic of our type is, read the book. I have yet to meet an alcoholic of our type who has taken those things, applied them to their life one day at a time to the best of their ability, which is all that's required. If you knew here and you anything like me and you think that anything less than perfection ain't good enough, so why even bother? I got a message for you. God don't require more of you today than you're capable of. Okay? If I just do the best I can today, I have yet to see an alcoholic go out here and pick up a drink. I ain't seen it happen one single solitary time, and I've been here for a while. To our new friends here tonight, I got a message for you. The program of recovery was designed for success, not for failure. There's no element of failure here. But I have to participate in my own recovery, don't I? One of the things that I've learned since I've been here in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is this is a very simple deal. Okay? Those who do get, and those who don't, and it's just that simple. I don't know about you, but I never sat in a bar room, watch a guy across the bar take a drink, and thought I was going to get drunk watching him drink. That's just as ridiculous as me coming in here, sitting in a seat, watching you get a sponsor and a home group and a commitment and work the steps and help others and think that somehow magically it's going to rub off on me. Those who do get, and those who don't, and it's just that simple. It's just that simple. No. I identified myself as an alcoholic. I didn't know what that was when I came here either. I thought I did. Of course, I thought I knew everything when I got here. Oh. Y'all remember Otis on the Andy Griffith Show? Right? Otis, man. Otis' clothes was wrinkled, had a pint in his pocket, drank cheap wine, was in and out of jail. I watched every episode of the Andy Griffith Show, even the ones in color, and I don't remember Otis working no place. Right? That's my concern. I was in London, England, and I said that at a conference. Y'all remember Otis on the Andy Griffith Show? And 2,000 people went, no. My sponsor told me you got to be awake in your own life, son, and remember where you're at, right? I had like the sliding definition of alcoholism, right? I'd have these definitions, and as my alcoholism progressed, I kept fitting them. So every time I fit it, I'd change it. If you'd asked me when I was a teenager, what is an alcoholic? I'd have said, oh, that's easy, somebody that's drunk every day. As a teenager, I became a daily drinker. That must not be it. An alcoholic As somebody who misses work, school, or important things in life because of drinking, it interferes with one's priorities in life. Yes, that certainly must be an alcoholic as a teenager. Alcohol began to interfere with work, school, and important things in life because of that ain't it. I finally figured it out. An alcoholic is somebody who goes to jail because of drinking. As you'll hear in a few minutes, I really had to change that one. By the time I staggered into the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, my definition of an alcoholic was that guy you see under the bridge, long trench coat, stocking cap on his head, drinking Wild Irish Rose, Mad Dog, a Thunderbird out of brown paper sack, and sleeping under a cardboard box. Yes, that certainly must be an alcoholic. The reason that was my definition when I got here is that is the only thing that had not yet happened to me. And if I didn't have the family that I had that for many, many years insisted upon breaking every fall I had, that's exactly where I would have been. I can stand here tonight in all honesty and tell you I drank in Wino's Alley in Sandusky, Ohio with them old men. The only difference between me and them is when it got dark, there was somebody who would unlock the back door for me and there was nobody to do it for them. I had the nerve, this is the kind of mind I got, to come into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous when I was new, poke my chest out and say, you know, I ain't never been homeless. There was an old timer at that meeting. His name was Jim Redmond. God rest his soul. He died 53 years sober. He looked at me and said, son, he said, I got some bad news for you. He said, if you grown and you living in your mom and daddy's house and you ain't paying no rent, you homeless. That man hurt my feelings. I hope I didn't step on no toes in here tonight. But the truth will set you free, right? So what is this thing called alcoholism? Doctor's opinion. First thing in the book, what's wrong with me? I can't get to some kind of solution or understand what I need to be doing until I know what the problem is. Threefold disease, mental, physical, spiritual. Mental part of it, they call it a mental obsession to drink. Not everyday walk-around language for me when I got to AA. You know, I used to get in the car. I worked for Ford Motor Company. You know, I didn't have a car, but after work, I worked midnights. I'd get in the car with the fellas, and we'd pull out of the parking lot, and I'd say, man, I've been thinking about a beer all night. Nobody in the front seat turned around and said, that's the mental obsession that precedes. We didn't know, right? What is an obsession? Simple. A thought so strong that it will override or overcome any thinking that I as a human being can raise as a defense against it. What are some of the mental defenses I tried to raise against the first drink? Well, I tried common sense. Well, my grandmother explained to me later why that didn't work. She said, boy, you weren't born with none. Okay? I tried self-knowledge. I did this last week, went to jail. I'll do this week, but still went to jail. That didn't work. I tried fear of consequences I might face if I drank. I'm going to scare myself sober. I'm waking up in my late teens and early 20s, my eyes open, I lay in the bed, and I mentally make a list of all the reasons why I am not drinking today. If I drink today, I'm going to flunk out of school, get kicked off the team. My girlfriend is going to leave me, get kicked out the house, a dirty urine, I'm going to penitentiary. All these things true in my life at one time or another. Usually I'd have 3 or 4 of them going on simultaneously. So I would lay in the bed, take a look at the truth, because all these things were true, and I'd make the easiest kind of decision that there is to make, a decision based on truth. And the decision was a very simple one. I ain't drinking. And I meant it as much as I mean it now. And then I get out of the bed. And usually like about 5 seconds later, another thought would come floating in my head. And it usually went something like this. Maybe you can identify with this. You could have one, right? One drink never, and bam, just like a radar, I lock on that thought. I'm only going to have one. And if I only have one, none of that stuff's going to happen, right? All right? Now, this is an honesty-based program, is it not? The principle of the first step is honesty, is it not? And we know that every principle in the steps must be applied to the following steps. Therefore, the principle of honesty must be applied to all 12 steps. If you're new in here, that's why they number these steps. I'm going to be honest with you tonight. I have never in my entire life had one of anything that I enjoy. My philosophy of life is very simple. If one's good, two's better, three's outstanding, four's magnificent, let's pony up money for five. I am Dr. Feelgood. Right? So what is the statement? I'm only going to have one. I'll tell you what it is. It's a lie. If the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is an honesty-based program, doesn't it naturally follow that alcoholism is a lie-based disease? My sponsor, Bill, told me when I came in the program, he said, I don't know about you. He said, but I never walked into a bar and said, hey, bartender, give me a shot in the beer. I want to be in jail by 9 o'clock. We are not a glum lot, are we? I love AA. I'm like the little boy that came home from his first day of school and his daddy said to him, well, did you learn anything? The little boy said, apparently not. They told me I had to come back tomorrow. No, and that's how it's been for me in AA, man. I love being with y'all, right? Mental obsession to drink. So now I'm only going to have this one, so I pick up the drink and I drink it. And the second part of the disease that Dr. Silkworth talks about becomes active. He called it the phenomenon of craving. Little story that I love to tell, true story. I'm out cutting my grass on a 95-degree day. So is my non-alcoholic next door neighbor. He gets hot and thirsty. I'm watching him when I'm riding. He gets off his lawnmower. He walks across the lawn to the deck. He flips open the cooler. It is full of cold beer. He pulls out a cold one. He pops a top on her. He sucks her down. It quenches his thirst. And I know nobody in this room is going to believe it, but I've seen this with my own two eyes. With that full cooler of beer still sitting there, that man actually got back on his lawnmower and finished cutting his grass. The difference between me and my neighbor, if I get off of my lawnmower and I pop a top on a cold one, and I suck her down, it does not quench my thirst. What it does to me, and maybe to you, is it make me thirstier. And grass cutting is over at the Coleman house. My lawnmower be sitting in that same spot 2 weeks from now when I get out of the county. Spiritual malady, soul sickness. My disease is rooted in selfishness, self-centeredness, and fear. I'm a guy who at the age of 14 made a conscious decision to have nothing else to do with God. And from that day until the day that I got to you, and even sometime after I got to you, I became the director. I got all these needs, and Bill talked about them in the 12 and 12. Companionship, security, all of these things. And because these are things that are provided in my life by a power greater than myself, if I stay close to him and do his work well, I ain't going to be close to him. So I got to make this stuff happen. And I began to try to manipulate the people, places, and things in my life to be where I wanted them to be, the way I wanted them to be, so that my needs could be met. Am I making any sense? And here's the problem with that. The world and the people in it refuse to cooperate. And as a result of that, I become restless, irritable, and discontented, and I will push or pull harder to try to get my way, and the world and the people in it still continue to not cooperate. And I become restless, irritable, and discontented. And I learned at the age of 14 that if I pour alcohol on restless, irritable, and discontented, I get a sense of ease, comfort, fearlessness, and well-being. You ever see a guy walk in a bar with the weight of the world on his shoulders and pick up that double header and get her down? But it's an illusion. Our book says that when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. A spiritual malady demands a spiritual solution. To our new friends, not a financial solution, not an intellectual solution, not a relationship solution. Oops. A spiritual malady demands a spiritual solution. Hence our 12th step having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. This disease of mind, body, and spirit is called alcoholism. And I don't know if you got it, but I definitely do. And I don't treat it. Death, imprisonment, or commitment are guaranteed me. And I'm not saying that to try to scare nobody, because you can't scare nobody in the recovery. If you're new here and you don't understand that, stick around and watch what happens to the people who don't. I'm now 53 years old. I was the second of 3 boys. I was raised in a Christian home. I was born in Sandusky, Ohio. I am the son of Pete and Evelyn Coleman. I had as fine a mother and father that have ever graced this earth. My mom was the president of Ohio Baptist Women's Association. All them famous people that you see on TV and religion and people been in my house. My father was the commissioner of the local Little League, was active in youth sports, and my grandmother cooked for everybody in town. I came from a family that was happy, joyous, and free, and lived a life of service. I didn't learn that in the big book. I saw it in my house. My mother worked for Chrysler Corporation. My father worked for General Motors. I'm retired from Ford. You always say, man, we had a lot of craziness in the house, but we had really nice cars. But we're spoiled rotten. If mom and dad said no, we went to our grandmother, because the word no wasn't in her vocabulary. Family vacations. There's nothing spectacular at all about my childhood, probably other than the fact it lasted 40 years. But anyway, and some of that was in here. All right. But I was a kid. I was happy, joyous, and free. I had an older brother. I had a younger brother. But you know what? And Mari talked about it earlier. I have always felt like remember how the TVs before these new TVs they got now, how you used to have to try to move the knob to get the horizontal. I always felt like everything was a little bit off. I was always a half a step behind everybody else my age. I was shy, insecure, and afraid. Mari talked about the what it is. I used to think, everybody thinking about me and all of that, and it was kind of a poor me kind of. What it is self-centeredness. If you think that everybody thinking about you, you probably find out what I did later on. Nobody was thinking about me. The problem with the alcoholic centers is his mind rather than his body. I don't live in the real world with the rest of you. No, and as a kid, I was always uncomfortable in my own skin, and to try to feel better. Now we're talking about something on the inside. I ain't talking about outside stuff, because I got outside stuff. I'm talking about what's on the inside. I'm always looking for something to make that feel better. Okay? And my first drink of choice was my older brother. I had an older brother who was 4 years older than me. I followed him everywhere that he went. My family played football on Saturdays and Sundays. My dad played at West Virginia State. My Uncle Bo played at Penn State. I had 2 cousins played in the National Football League for over 10 years. We do football on Saturdays and Sundays, and we do it in front of 90 or 100,000. That's what we was raised to do. Our baby pictures is us in diapers on the floor in a 3-point stance. All right, that's where my dad was, right? And I had an older brother by the time he was 16 years old. He was 6'2". He weighed 215 pounds. He could run a 4.40 on a cinder track. And our high school was one of the great high school programs in the United States, and he agreed to go to Ohio State to play for a guy named Woody Hayes. The year is 1972. And I followed my brother everywhere, and he took me everywhere that he went. In his shadow, I had ease and comfort. I'm around older guys. Nobody expected me to do, or say anything, and I'm comfortable in that. I'm hiding from life already. And I'm with my brother, and that's the way that I was at the age of 13. In September of 1972, we had a scrimmage against a team in Ohio called the Massillon Tigers. We used to scrimmage them every year. And late in that scrimmage, and he had a big day that day, he got hit low, he got hit high, he fell funny. He walked to the sidelines, collapsed, wasn't breathing. 9 hours of brain surgery on Monday. He died on Wednesday, September the 5th, 1972. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember like, is that what made me alcoholic? Absolutely not. Go stop any car out here on the street. You can get a similar story. People live, people die, tragedies happen. That is life, is it not? What did it do to me? It broke my heart. Almost killed my mom and daddy. Really almost killed my grandparents. That was September of 72. What I could tell you about that is that, even in my darkest days in the street, I have never doubted the power or existence of a God. And I'm going to tell you why. Biggest funeral in the history of Sandusky, according to the Follett House Museum. We got to the funeral home that next Friday night, and there was literally thousands of people on that block. And we got out of that car, and my mother walked into that funeral home, and she stood by that casket. And they didn't have no counseling and all that in them days when these kind of tragedies happen. And my mother stood by that casket, and she turned and she faced them people, and this is what my mother said. I don't know when, I don't know where, and I don't know how, but blessings will come from this. I saw my mother take an entire town, put it on her shoulders, and walk it through there. And I want to share something with you. I knew at the age of 13, my mama ain't got that kind of power. In my darkest days in the street, I never doubted the existence of a power greater than myself. I just came to the conclusion I ain't needed. After my brother's gone, I'm hanging out with guys my own age. I'm 13 years old. We stand on the street corner. I've known these guys since I'm 2 years old. Go to school with them, go to church with them, play ball with them, known them as long as I've known my own brothers. Topics of conversation among our crew in 1932 is very simple. 3 things: drinking beer, smoking weed, and climbing in and out of girls' bedroom windows in the middle of the night. And I was batting 0, 0, 0. I had a mother that didn't play that. I went to school, church, ball practice, and home. But I'm standing on the corner with the fellas. I ain't letting them know I don't know that, do I? Y'all remember them dogs they used to put in the back window of the car with the head going like this? That's me, man. Oh, yeah, ain't that cool? Yeah, that's fun. I was over there last night. I'm 13 years old. I'm a liar, a fake, and a phony. I'm compromising everything that I've taught and believed to be true to gain your acceptance. I'm empty on the inside. I'm looking for an answer on the outside. One of the things I've learned in AA is outside solutions don't fix inside problems. No. I was raised in a home where spiritual principles was taught. In our house, they told us honesty is the best policy. A real man is always honest with himself and other people. In our house, we got automatic whoopings when we got caught lying. That happened to anybody else's house in here? That's step 1. The principle of honesty was taught me at the end of a hickory stick. My mother said to me one day, "Kenny, come here, I'm concerned about you." She said, "Contrary to what you believe, the sun does not rise when you wake up and set when you go to bed. Look out the window and tell me what you see. Trees, birds, sky, grass, flowers, people, dogs, and cats." She said, "You think this just popped up out of nowhere, Kenny?" She said, "There's a power that's greater than you that created all of this, and all you have to do is be willing to believe that step 2. In our house, they told us, if you would make a decision to put your life in the hands of the power that created all this. In my house, they call that power God. She said, "You will always have what you need no matter what happens outside or around you." My mama was telling me the answer is inside, not outside, step 3. In our house, they told us, anytime you got a problem, no matter how bad you think it is, come talk to us about it. A problem shared is a problem half solved. You're only as sick as your secrets. My mother used to say, "No man is an island." And I used to say, "I'm going to be the first one." That's steps 4 and 5. In our house, my mama used to say the biggest room in a human being's life is the room for improvement. If you can make C's, you can make B's. If you can make B's, you can make A's. And if you'll ask the power that created all of this to help you in any positive thing that you want to do to make your life go forward His way, He will always do so. That's what the power do. That's step 6 and 7. In our house, they told us anytime you hurt, harm, or wrong somebody else, go make right the wrong you done. You owe money, pay it. You owe time, give it. You owe an apology, make it. Clean up your mess. That's what responsible people do. That's steps 8 and 9. My mother used to say you can never go forward in this life if you don't know where you are and what you need to work on to get where it is you want to go. Try going somewhere if you don't know where you at sometime. Okay? I read a book about Socrates when I was in the 11th grade, and in that book I remember one line. Socrates said the uninventoried life is a waste. Step 10. Our grandmother said the secret to having a good day is very simple. When you wake up in the morning, slide out of the bed onto your knees, say one word, please. As you go throughout the day and you don't know what to do, ask the power that created all of this to help you. At night before you get back in the bed, hit your knees again and say 2 words, thank you, step 11. And in our house, they told us the greatest thing a human being could do with their lives was not acquire money and material things that would be of service to other people. We were taught to follow the golden rule, talk to folk the way you want to be talked to, treat folk the way you want to be treated, respect your elders, and offer to share what you have with your friends, cousins, or brothers before you have your own. Be of service to your fellow man. Step 12. When I got on the bus to go to kindergarten, I was already armed with a set of principles, spiritual in nature, today that I know is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. To our new friends here tonight, I have a message for you again. Spiritually principled living did not originate in Akron, Ohio in 1935. Those principles are ancient. And there's a lot of people who live like that out there every single day, and guess what? They don't expect a pat on the back for it either. Of course, I always did. I was 7 months sober. I went to see my grandmother. I said, Mama, guess what? She said, what? I said, I paid my bill 7 months in a row. She said, I paid mine 72 years in a row. Get out of here. I'm doing something different. I'm doing something special. There's people who live like that out there every day. Every day. My mom used to talk to me a lot after my brother. When, if you stop and think about it, though, if I had all of that before I went to kindergarten, what am I doing standing up here tonight? Reason for that's pretty simple, ain't it? I never did any of it. I talked about it a lot. You ever be in a bar room and be some drunk in there quoting scripture? That was me. I'd be down to Brownlee's Tavern. Some man would break down and start crying in his beer, usually because he was getting divorced, losing his job, or going to jail, because that's what we did down to Brownlee's. And Kent would stagger over there with a drink in his hand and say something like this, Luke chapter 9, verses 14 to... I'm giving spiritual guidance down to Brownlee's Tavern. Huh? Then I didn't just stop there. I get marital advice down to Brownlee's. I'd never had a wife, but I didn't see how that made a difference. With my life savings laying on the bar, I could tell you how to invest your money. My father called me a walking encyclopedia of perfectly useless information. Huh? I was a parrot, and I got to watch being a parrot in here. There's a lot of things being said in here that are totally contrary to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, that have no basis in our program and our 12 steps. So I need to be conscious of the fact of what I'm saying and what I'm repeating. What I was taught was this: if you can't verify it in that book, leave it alone. Leave it alone. I come into meetings and, I hear lots of things. I hear guys, people stand up to where I come from and they say, I've relapsed and I'm back. I'll always ask them a couple of questions. Like, did you have a sponsor? Oh, no. Did you work the 12 steps as outlined in the book and try to help others? No. Did you have a home group and a commitment, a service commitment in AA? Oh, no. Then what did you relapse from? Let me share something with you. Relapse is a return to a prior condition. If the prior condition is untreated alcoholism, and the treatment for alcoholism is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you ain't applied them, you ain't relapsed, you've continued to drink. And we got to stop giving people the impression, standing up in these meetings, that AA don't work, and you ain't done nothing but take up a seat in here. I got a message for you again. Sitting in the chicken coop don't make you no chicken. We got a program of recovery here that's outlined in our book. That's not relapse, that's continuing to drink. It doesn't say haven't had a spiritual awakening as a result of attendance. We live probably in the greatest time to be a member of AA in history. We are surrounded with meetings round the clock, great literature, great events. We got CD. We are pamphlets. We are inundated with wonderful, wonderful information. But those things in and of themselves are not a substitute for a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. When I was new, a guy said to me, don't drink and come to these meetings and you'll be fine. I said, dude, if I could not drink, I wouldn't need to come to these meetings. You follow me? We're giving people the impression that the Alcoholics Anonymous don't work who don't do Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the 12 steps. So let's get that straight. My mom used to talk to me a lot after my brother died, and she'd say things like, oh, Kenny, God's been so good to you. You're going to have a wonderful life. Be of service to God and help others. Blah, 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 blah. And I used to look at my mom, and I would tell my mom, you know what? I ain't got no desire to be of service to God, you, or nobody else. If you want to know what I want out of life, I can tell you in 30 seconds. I want mine. I want to get it my way, and I'm going to need you to leave me alone while I'm doing it, because I ain't going to do it the way you do. And my mom would get that sad look on her face, and she'd say, you know, you don't get it. And I pointed my finger at her. I said, you the one who don't get it. If you don't think my way is going to work, get out the way and watch me roll. I was 14 years old. My mom we'd fight on Sundays when I had to get them to go to church. Get them to go to church. I don't want to. Big fight, right? I was sitting in church one Sunday, and I had A visit from the enemy, which is my thinking. When I was new in AA, I said to my sponsor, Bill, one day, Bill, I got a question. He goes, what? I said, you know the invisible line they talk about in AA? He goes, yeah. I said, if it's invisible, how does anybody know they crossed it? He said, I want you to triple your meetings. I said, Bill, I'm already going to 3 a day. He said, go to 9. He said, anytime you in a room alone, all your enemies are there. And he's referring to my thinking. And I'm sitting in church one day and I got to thinking. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to live in this house with these people forever. In a minute, I'm going to be out of there and I don't have to do this no more. So the next Sunday, I made a decision. I will never again darken the door of a church as long as I live. Next Sunday, my mother came to wake me up. I said, not a problem. She said, really? No argument? I said, no. I said, you got 2 years, 11 months, 3 weeks, and about 4 more days, and I'm through. That's what I said to my mother. Can you imagine what she must have been thinking? You know, we talk a lot about child abuse in society today. Y'all looking at a parent abuser. Okay. In our home, there was no screaming and hollering prior to me picking up a drink. In our home, there was no sleepless nights, anxiety, fear, depression, guilt and shame and remorse until I picked up a drink. I infected the people who loved me with all of that. One of the gifts that God did give me is I did well in school. Mari talked about that. I'm a guy who gets straight A's with no effort. I'm a guy that can absorb huge amounts of information in short amounts of time, and I know how to take a test, and that don't make me a good student, as I found out when I got to college. But I was sitting in study hall one day, and I had a visit from the enemy, my thinking, and this is what I thought. You know, these people in here break their neck trying to get B's and C's, taking general math and science. I'm taking calculus, physics, 4th year Latin, 4th year English. I'm sleeping through class and getting straight A's. You know, it just might be entirely possible that I knew everything. I had no evidence to support that thought as being true. I accepted it as a fact, left the room, and took action on it because that's what I do. I went home and told that to my mother and father. I thought they ought to know. Might change things around the house a little bit. What happened after that, make a long story short, my father came up off that couch, and I have never asked him to the day he died, but I believe that man intended to strangle me. And he had me thinking, look what we got in the house. I know what's coming. I'm going to end it now. You know, my dad fought in Korea. My dad wasn't on a, like a boat or in, Fort Campbell or nothing, and not to diminish those things, but my daddy was in the woods in Korea. And my daddy played football when they didn't have face masks. I was scared of my daddy. And when he came up off that couch, I didn't wait around to see what he wanted. I broke for the screen door. And I got out the screen door and I closed it. He was right behind me. And my father looked through the screen door and he pointed his finger at me. And he said, boys, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have a hard life because don't nobody know anything. And I stood on that porch and I looked through the screen door and I laughed in his face. A significant day in my life because on that day I closed the door. Our book says honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness are the 3 essentials of recovery, yet these are indispensable. On that day I closed my mind, so that means I'm no longer teachable. I can no longer learn and I can no longer grow. Everybody in my life became an idiot. My mother, my father, the preacher, the teacher, later on the police, the judges, the lawyer, the probation, the PO. You can't tell me because if I don't know it, it ain't worth knowing became my philosophy of life. Selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, self-absorbed, and according to my mother, mean as a rattlesnake, and I have yet to take a drink of alcohol. Like Mari talked about earlier, I was the perfectly tilled soil for the disease of alcoholism. All I had to do was water it, and one day I did. I got in the car with a guy I played basketball with in high school, who was 2 years older than me, who lived the life I lived in my head. Snazzy car, pocket full of money, ran around with the kind of girls I ran away from when I seen them coming down the hall. I got in the car with Johnny. He looked at me. He said, hey, Coleman, you want to get something to drink? Now, I have been warned about drinking. Alcoholism does not run in my family. It gallops. And I have been told we do not do alcohol well. Look at your Uncle Ed, look at Junior, look at Bobby. They all died of cirrhosis. Both sides of my family are rife with this disease. If Johnny had said to me that day, let's go rob the carry out, I guarantee you I would have done it. That's how little sense of self that I had, and that's the lengths I'm willing to go to gain your acceptance, to try to fill the God-sized hole in me with something outside of me. We drove through the drive-thru. We bought 10 quarts of Sliss Malt Liquor Bull. To the youngsters in here, prior to 40 ounces, they had something called quarts. They were 32 ounces. We bought 10 of them. Johnny looked at me and said, 5 for you, 5 for me. He dropped the convertible top on that beautiful silver Pontiac, cranked up the music, and we rolled through the streets of Sandusky, and we drank that beer, and my life changed. I heard a lot of descriptions about what happens when that alcoholic is on that first drunk. I heard a guy say one time, there comes a moment in the drinking career of every alcoholic, he takes a drink, and alcohol flips the switch, the lights come on. Everything I ever wanted to be, do, or say immediately became possible. I went from shy, insecure, and afraid to bold, confident, suave, debonair, and absolutely fearless in about 20 minutes. We went behind the Derrick Apartments where all the thugs hung out. We pulled up, people surrounded the car, the music's blasting. I ain't said 5 words in public in the last 3 years. I looked at Johnny, I said, turn that music down. There's a few things I want to tell a few people who are present here this afternoon that I've been wanting to tell them for quite some time. And I went around that circle of hoodlums, and not only did I tell each and every one of them what I thought of them, I also told them what they needed to do, in my opinion, to improve themselves. The reaction of the people around that car, guys leaned in the car and they hugged me and they said, see, I told you Coleman all right. He loosened up. He's drinking a little beer. He's one of us. He's one of the boys. Immediately, I connected the dots. When I drink, I change. And I now have the acceptance of the people whose acceptance I want the most, not mom and dad. It was them drive-by shooters behind the Derrick Apartments. Alcohol equals success, and you better believe I got it. We left from there. We went up to the home of some of them girls he run around with, I run away from. Never been over there in my life. I walked into that home like I was paying the mortgage. I went in and I sat down at the dining room table and I looked across the dining room and made eye contact with a girl I believe is the prettiest girl to graduate from Sandusky High School in its 161-year history. I had never even breathed in her direction, much less said hello. And I looked over there at her and she looked up at me and I said, come here. And she got up and started walking toward me. Now, any sane human being at this point would probably think to themselves, gee, Ken, if you wasn't so shy and scared, look what you could have done just by speaking up. Is that what I thought? Absolutely not. Maybe you can identify with this. Here's what I thought. If you had been drinking before now, look what you could have done. Look what you've been missing. I immediately attributed it to drinking. Okay? Now, this is an honest program, as I said earlier, and I'll be honest with you tonight. When she got over there to me, I had no idea what to do with her. But I don't think that far ahead when I'm drinking. I have a lot of good ideas. I just don't think I'm through. So she got over there. I did what they do on TV. I went like this, and she sat down in my lap, and my life changed again. And the upshoot to that whole story is this, that on that day, alcohol did for me what I could not or would not do for myself. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. That was gone. And that's a very powerful thing. I'll tell you what happened the rest of that day. I'll give you the rest of my drinking history. Drink trouble. Okay? If I stood here tonight, and this was a bottle of beer, and I stood here and took a drink, a cop would drop right out of that light and land in the middle of this floor. I came in there, ain't all the time, just say, drink trouble, drink. I get that. I get that. What happened the rest of that day? I went in a blackout. I have no idea what went on. According to eyewitnesses at the house, I came in the front door, threw up a trail through the house, went in the bathroom, hit everything but the toilet. The next thing I remember is my mom knocking on the bedroom door, screaming at me, come clean up this mess. I staggered into the hallway in what later years would be my drinking uniform, my underwear. Bouncing off of them hallway walls, I got a hangover that's alive. I go in the bathroom, I lock the door, I put my hands on the bathroom sink, I looked in the mirror, and this is what I said, man, oh man, I cannot wait to do that again. Grounded for life is what was being discussed in the living room. And how I got grounded for life first time I got drunk. So I had a meeting with myself in the bathroom. I love to have a meeting with myself because you can solve anything that's going on. And I had a meeting with myself, and here's what I come up with. Okay, Ken, here's what happened. You got drunk. Yep. You got sick. Yep. You got grounded for life. Now, the problem is not that you got drunk, Kent. The problem is that you got sick. That's what got you in trouble. What you got to do is learn how to drink without getting sick. You understand that not drinking was never an option, was on the table. Why? Because alcohol equals pats on the back, girls in my lap. Alcohol made me feel whole for the first time in my life. Alcohol equals success. Not drinking was not an option, and I was gone. Got a driver's license and a car at the age of 16, had a 1 o'clock curfew, come home at 4:30 in the morning. My mom, when I used to come home, my mom always had her bedroom light on, and she would call me and she said, "Come here, I want to see you." And I would stick my head on my mother's door, and this is what I used to ask her: "Why are you up?" If y'all go somewhere, I don't sit up here at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning waiting on y'all to come home. I want you to understand the depth of the selfishness and self-centeredness. I cannot even conceive of the love of a parent for a child and the love that my family have for me. I am so full of self. In Dr. Bob's story, he said he said it seemed that he lived his life without regard to the wishes, rights, or privileges of anyone else. I'm so full of me. I can't even see you. The fact that you love me enough to wait is inconceivable to a guy as selfish and self-centered as I am. And on this night, I come home, it's 4:30 in the morning. She's sitting there with tears rolling down her eyes. The living room lamp is on, and this is what my mom said to me: "As your parents, we owe you a roof over your head, food to eat, clothes on your back, and an education, and we've done that." She said, "Kenny, I got something you can't have, and it's my peace of mind." She said, "I got news for you, buddy. You going to penitentiary or the cemetery, and I ain't going with you. I'm done. Go. Do what you want. I'm giving you to God. I'm done." This is what I said to my mom: "I broke you. I broke you. And I want you to know something, Ma. I'm a little bit disappointed. You're such a spiritual giant. Because it wasn't even that hard." And I walked away, and that's how I treated my mom. You want to see alcoholism, the family disease in action? You should have seen the day I went to college. I went to Miami of Ohio, one of the finer institutions of higher learning in this country. My mom and dad drove me down there in a van. All the freshmen come on Sunday, hugging, crying, all these babies leaving home for the first time. If you was watching my family, you would have seen alcoholism and what it had done to us. My father unloaded that van like his butt was on fire. They was up I-75 before I got the key in the door. The last thing my father said to me before he went down the steps of the dormitory was, "Now your mother can sleep." But I ain't hurting nobody. It's my life. Without parental interference, my alcoholism skyrocketed. Prior to this, I'm doing mostly weekend stuff. I'd have been knee walking drunk every day if I could have got away with it and had the money. Now, they ain't in the way. My alcoholism progressed. I got shakes by the time I'm 19 years old. I had set up headquarters in the Boar's Head Inn uptown. I went to see Tom, the bartender. He's kind of like my sponsor. And I said to Tom, the bartender, I said, "I think I got Parkinson's." I said, "I couldn't fasten my shirt this morning." He said, "You're 19 years old. Yeah, Parkinson's." He said, "I'll tell you what you do. Go get a fifth of 100 proof old Granddad, drink 2 shots in the morning. I guarantee your hands will stop shaking." I went and got the Granddad, got up the next morning shaking like a leaf, drank 2 shots. My hands stopped shaking. You know what I said? "That man's a genius." My sponsor pointed out to me when I came in AA, "Do you notice you never questioned the bartender? But you were surrounded by coaches, family, friends, counsel, all these people who loved you and wanted to help you and wanted the best for you, and all you ever said to them is, 'I ain't got to listen to you. I can do what I want. I'm grown and I ain't hurting nobody.' But you never questioned the bartender." To the new people in here tonight, why is it that I'm always willing to listen to the people who harm me? Why is that? Reading Bill's story. See, I'm a guy that don't stand behind a podium and tell you about the good times I had drinking. And I'm going to tell you why. From the day I picked it up to the day I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, it did nothing but take from me. You know what Kent's definition of a good time is? Any consequences that have to be paid as a result of my drinking are paid by somebody else. That's a good time. If you have a sleepless night because of my drinking, that's your problem. You should have went to bed. Okay? How many days did my employer get cheated out of a day's work? How many times did my creditors get cheated out of a payment? Okay? And I'm having fun. Right? Read Bill's story. Bill thought he was having fun too, didn't he? Yeah. Relationship with Lois going down the toilet cost him his education. His real friends take off. He becomes this lone wolf. And the progression of alcoholism to homelessness to joblessness. Do you follow what I'm saying? And the great lie is I'm picking up a drink and thinking that somehow, someday, I'm going to recapture the magic of that first drunk. Wasn't good then, ain't good now. You will never hear me glorify the disease that blew up my family, burned my life to the ground. You will never hear me stand behind the podium and talk about the good times I have drinking. I've been restored to sanity. Went to work in a factory with a college education because it facilitated my drinking. Drinking is now the center of my life, and I construct every activity, person, place, and thing in my life to accommodate my drinking. If it don't accommodate my drinking, it's out of my life. It's just that simple. I'm not going to talk about all the trouble. I'll just say in a general way, I've been convicted of driving under the influence of alcohol 7 times in the state of Ohio. I've been convicted on felony weapons charges. I've been in a lot of trouble. And what I will tell you is, I had a heart attack at the age of 28. I flipped the car over in the middle of town. A lot of people could have been killed. That made the front page of the paper. I could go on and on and on. That's podium flash. Because the stuff that's wrong with me is on the inside. Because you don't have to go down there. You can get off the elevator at any floor. There's only 2 questions. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. And if, when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic, and you may be suffering from an illness that only a spiritual experience can conquer. And that's all that's important, not all the stuff that happened to me. At the end of my drinking, no baths, no showers. I got a liver distended about 7 inches. I spent the last 4 years of my drinking desperately trying to stop. I had a heart attack when I was 28 years old. Dropped dead in my bedroom. Took me to the hospital. I was in the cardiac unit. My mother stood in the door and said to the doctor, I already lost my oldest son. Do what you got to do. I can't lose another one. With tears running down the side of my face and wires strapped all over me, I said it, and I mean it as much as I mean it today. God, if you let me live, I will never drink again. And I meant it. 48 hours in the cardiac unit. They put me in a regular hospital room. My heartbeat stabilized. I had taken last rites that night. And 2 hours in the regular hospital room, I'm drunk. If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? I got sentenced to 5 years in the state penitentiary for some crimes I did commit, and I stood before a judge who said, before I throw you away, my uncle, my mother's brother, was the mayor of Sandusky. My family is full of professional athletes, politicians, people in religion. And then there's me. But the judge said, before I throw you away, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you on a period of indefinite probation. 1 dirty urine, I'm going to send you to penitentiary for 5 years, and I ain't shocking you out in 11 months. I had a record this thick. He said, I'm sick of this. This is the last time. I walked out of that courtroom, and I thanked God, and I swore to God I'll never drink again. But I didn't have no tools of recovery at my disposal. If I had the power to decide not to drink and could not drink, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? And I showed up a week later. Here's what, I left work to go report, my first time reporting a dirty urine. I go to prison. Here's the thought that came to me on the way. You know, they say they never test you on your first time reporting. They don't think anybody's that stupid. Who's they? Who's they? Do anybody have that that's the head I bought into AA. And you want to tell me, think the drink through. Yeah, I will. Let's go get one. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We're killing new people in here with that crap. We're killing people in here with that crap. A spiritual malady demands a spiritual solution. I can't think myself sober. I can't scare myself sober. If I could, I would have never had to come here. No baths, no showers. I got a liver sticking out to here. Every time I take a drink of alcohol, I go in the bathroom, I cough all this stuff up. I'm drinking 2 beers. I'm falling asleep in the bar. I'm crying all the time. I tried everything I could think of to stop drinking them last 3 or 4 years. I went back to church. Didn't work for me. I used to sit there and look at my mama. My mama got it. God rest her soul. She walked in here now. This room will get twice as bright. How do you get it from out here to in here? It's like I'm standing on the shore, you know, and then God is out there. And how do you get to him? I got no bridge. I got no way to get there. You know, and that's what it was like for me. I used to sit up at night with a Bible in his hand and a beer in this hand. I couldn't shut it off. In the last 2 years, I quit trying and I lost hope. And I went to a place that's worse than hate, that's worse than resentment. It's called cold-blooded, cold-hearted indifference. I didn't care if you live or die. I don't care if I live or die. I just can't take it anymore. And I'm drinking myself to death. And I'm coughing all this white stuff up. My liver and my pancreas had ceased to function. What I'm coughing up is pure alcohol. My body is now rejecting what my mind is obsessed with. I'm 32 years old and I'm dying of alcoholism. I'm a great believer in the power of prayer. I was prayed in here. I believe the prayers of my parents. I believe all them God helped me before I passed out all them time. I believe that when the time is right. I came out of a bar called the Pump Lounge. It was a Thursday night. It was 11:30 at night. I had to be to work at midnight. If I'm 1 minute late, I'm fired. And I'm sitting in this car, and I had what they call a moment of clarity or a moment of sanity. There's a guy in Cleveland, Six Pack Charlie, who said that that's the moment when God paralyzes the liar in you long enough for you to see the truth. And what I saw sitting in that car, my head was clear for the first time in 20 years. If you don't stop drinking, you're going to die, and you better get some help because you can't do it by yourself, and you better do it now because you're running out of time. Just like that, out of nowhere. And I went home and I called my best drinking buddy from college who's a doctor. And I owed him a lot of money and I hadn't paid him back. His wife answered the phone and this is what she said and how she said it. Richard is Kent. And Richard got on the phone and he said, what's up? I said, Rich, it's your boy, man. I need some help. And this is what he said to me. He said, man, I've been waiting for this call for 7 or 8 years. Pack a bag. Stay by the phone. I got you. And he is not a member of this fellowship. When I get a call from the intergroup office at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and that sick and suffering alcoholic is on the other end, you know what I tell them, don't you? Pack a bag. Stay by the phone. I got you. And for that, I am responsible. Called me back, said, don't go to work, they're going to fire you. I want you to come down here. I'm going to put you in treatment in a place called Green Hall in Xenia, Ohio. He lived in Centerville, Ohio, outside of Dayton. It's about 225 miles from where I live. We set forth the next morning, my brother and his wife in the front seat. I'm in the back seat with a case of Genesee. Now, I didn't know too much about treatment, but I had figured out on my own they wasn't serving no liquor in there. So, you know, I'm not relieved of the obsession to drink. We're shooting down I-75. I got 3 or 4 of them cold Jennies in me, and y'all ain't going to believe this, but I had a visit from the enemy on my way to treatment. And here's what the enemy said after 3 or 4 cold beers. You know, I just may have overreacted here. It ain't that bad. Anybody relate to that? Man, give me 2 shots. What? What problem? Are you kidding me? The effect produced by alcohol. That's what it does for me. And it's a delusion, isn't it? I'm a guy who drinks alcohol to feel better about problems caused by drinking alcohol. I drink, I have problems. My life gets worse. I feel worse. I drink even more to feel better. I have more problems as a result of that. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And it's like being on a merry-go-round and there ain't nobody to shut it off. That's what active alcoholism was like in my life. What I didn't know is that my dad had told my brother and his wife, I'll give you $100, you don't bring that tramp back here. That's a true story. So they refused to turn around. We got down there and I got in the car with Richard and he got me a quart of Miller's. He said it was always your favorite. We drove from his home to Green Memorial Hospital in Xenia. We pulled in the parking lot. I had this much left in that quart. He put his car in park. He turned. He looked at me, got the biggest smile I'd ever seen on his face. He said, go ahead, dog, finish that. And don't ask me how I know it, man. He said, that's the last drink you're ever going to take. It was 17th of May, 1992. I have not had another drop of alcohol or anything stronger than aspirin since that day, and I would have never believed it possible. It's because Alcoholics Anonymous works. I ain't been back out there. To the new people in here, relapse is not a part of recovery, nor it is a requirement for recovery. And most people ain't relapsing anyway because they ain't doing this. I've seen people work the steps, have a spiritual awakening, stop doing what they need to do, get spiritually blocked and drink. I ain't talking about that. This will work if I'm willing to work it. I got the treatment, I got out of detox, I went to men's group. They was reading out loud stories of their drinking in the streets. Counselor says to me, what do you think, Kent, your first day in group? I said, here's what I think, Jim. When I'm down here for a few days to get help for this small problem I might have, I would like to volunteer my time, service, and energy to help you with these people, because these are the sickest people I've ever seen in my life. That one statement got me an extra week of treatment. I spent 35 days in a 28-day program. They cut my insurance off at 28 days. They called the Ford plant. They said, we don't think Kent's ready to leave the hospital. You know what they said out to the plant? We don't either. Next day, they had me write and read to the group. I did. I got done. Jim said, put your chair in the middle of the room. Let's make a circle around Kent and tell him what we think of him. I'd like to start the ball rolling by saying, Kent's so full of BS, his eyes are turning brown. If you throw him in water, he'd float away. That was the nicest thing that was said in that room that day. And what them guys told me was if I didn't get honest with myself, I was going to leave that place and I was going to die. And how it works, I said, this is a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. My sponsor, Kenny, told me when I got sober, son, that ain't a suggestion. Get honest or die. It's the principle of the first step. And I sat in my room and I made a decision to be as honest as I could the rest of the time I was there, because I got honest with myself and I knew whatever bit them guys bit me. We tell stories in here Stephen King couldn't make up. You know what I mean? Our game recognizes game, man. I went to my first AA meeting at Green Hall. Never been to AA in my life. Lady from out of town had a problem. She threw it out on the floor. They went around the room and they shared with that lady similar problems they had had and solutions they had found. Nobody judged her, criticized her, condemned her. I saw the fellowship. Now, I'm talking about the fellowship. Okay? Come to the aid of a complete and total stranger with no judgment or condemnation at my first meeting, and it blew my mind. My thought at my first AA meeting was, how could something this cool exist and I've never heard of it? I was given a gift, and I'm very, very grateful to God for it, because I was dying. And it was a gift to love in AA the first time I saw it. I didn't understand. I didn't know nothing about it. But there was something attractive about the solution that was being presented, because solution will attract. I got out of treatment after 35 days. I went home and played a game. It's called Don't Drink, Go to Meetings, and Don't Do Nothing Else. If I stick my arm through a window and I cut an artery in my arm and start bleeding all over the floor, I put a towel on my arm, I drive myself to the hospital, I run in the emergency room, I'm bleeding to death. The doctor comes out, says, come on back, Mr. Coleman, we'll treat you now. I sit there in the emergency room, bleeding to death, look at the doctor and say, no, thank you, I'll just sit here. And I bleed to death in the emergency room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the emergency room. I've been here long enough now that I've watched people who attend these meetings on a regular basis die of untreated alcoholism. The treatment for the disease I suffer from, don't know about you, but I suffer from, is a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, period. Period. See, I thought alcohol was the problem. And I'm not drinking. And I've never been so angry. I went to 250 meetings. Nobody told me 90 meetings in 90 days. A guy said to me, we don't have quarterly recovery here. I said, well, how long do I have to come? And this is what an old-timer told me in Ohio. He said, you got to come until you decide you want to drink again. You got to come till you decide you want to drink again. I went to 250 meetings in 3 months and ended up in the parking lot of Daly's Pub with untreated alcoholism, and I'm vibrating. I'm vibrating. I want to drink so bad. All of the stuff that's blocking me from the Spirit, which is the answer, ain't been addressed. I'm full of resentment, guilt, all the stuff that I used to drink to get the but I ain't drinking no more. When I stop drinking and I got no program of recovery, I don't get better, I get worse. My daddy got a DUI in 78, never drank again, said I don't need it. He was happy, joyous, and free. I thought, well, if I get one, I'll do like Daddy did. I had 7 of them things. Instead of going into Daly's Pub, I said a prayer. And I said, God, what am I doing wrong? And like a lightning bolt came, what are you doing right? If you go to 250 meetings in 3 months, you hear it every day. Get a sponsor, work the steps, read the book, get a home group, get active, and help others. I didn't do none of that. And I went and I pulled out of there and I went to a meeting and I went to a man and I said, would you help me? And this is what the man told me. He said, I will sponsor you out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and give you what I was given. He said, I will demonstrate for you in my daily life how I live these steps in my life. You know, they call the 12 steps a kit of spiritual tools. I love that. I got a toolbox in my house in Sandusky. I ain't never watched a hammer and pliers walk across the floor and fix a thing. The only value of a tool is if I pick it up and use it. The only value of these steps is if I apply them to my life. I've had the great privilege of standing behind podiums of AA all over the world. I have yet to attend a meeting where somebody stands up and says, "Works if you know it." To our new friends, this is not about the acquisition of knowledge and intellect. It's about the application of principles. And until the rubber meets the road, I'm going to be somewhere drunk with a whole lot of knowledge about AA. And my sponsor took me through the steps as I try to live them today. My time's up. I'm going to wrap this up and just tell you that I did get to make amends to my mom. My mom, I went back to live with my mom and dad because I didn't have a safe place to live when I got out of treatment. They let me in the house. And my mom was dying of bone cancer. And my sponsor told me, "You will not go in there with none of that I'm sorry crap, Kent. You're going to do something you've never done before." And I said, "What's that, Bill?" He says, "You're going to go in there and be the kind of son that God would have you to be." And I helped my dad take care of my mom on a daily basis. My mom saw me go to all them AA meetings. My mom saw me bring my first sponsees into that house and sit down at the dining room table and open the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. My mama saw me put on a shirt and a tie and go speak at AA meetings when I didn't even have a suit. She got close to the end. My sponsor said, "It is now time for the direct." And they got her off the morphine, and I went to the hospital to see my mom, and I had this big speech planned out. And I got in there, and I sat down by the bed, and I looked at my mom, and she looked at me, and she had tears running down her face, and I had tears running down mine, and the only thing that come out of my mouth was, "Mama, I'm sorry." And my mother beamed at me, and she said, "I forgive you." She said, "Kenny, I want you to do one thing for me. I want you to promise me that you'll stay with those people in AA because they were able to do for you what we could not." My mom died holding my hands and looking in my eyes with my whole family. I had a big family in the hospital room calling her name. And my uncle stood in the back of the room and said, "Don't call her no more because she ain't going to look away from him. That's how she wants to go." And that's how my mother left this earth. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I've been blessed 1,000,000 times over since then. But if that's the only thing that I would have gotten, that would have been enough. Thank God for the fellowship and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God for the fellowship and the program. My daddy died. I was 18 years sober, and we were the best of friends. Didn't agree with everything that he did. He didn't agree with everything that I did. And I made my amends to my dad. You know, my daddy didn't read the script. I owed my daddy a lot of money. And you know what the script is, don't you? How much do I owe you? "Oh, no, just stay sober, and then everything's fine." My daddy said, "I want my money." And I made arrangements to pay my dad the money I owed him, and I paid him. And when my daddy died, I was the last person to see my daddy. And after my daddy died, there was a guy my daddy worked General Motors for 40 years. There was a guy he worked with who was 30-some years sober in AA, and that guy came to see me after my dad died. And he said, "Ken," he said, "I remember the day that your dad came to work and you was on the front page of the newspaper, and your dad said that it's the first time in his life that he's hung his head publicly." He said, "After you got a year in AA, he said, your first AA anniversary, he said, your dad came to me and said, 'Hey, Joe, do you know my boy?' And Joe said, 'Yeah, Pete, I know your boy.' And he said, your dad looked at me and said, 'Man, ain't he something? Don't talk to me about AA. Don't work. Don't talk to me.'" Got married in here. Last year I got divorced. I was 20 years sober, and I was married to a woman 23 years sober, and that ended a year ago. And I thought my life was over. And I was surrounded by, I got 2 little girls, ages 12 and 16, that look like my wife, my ex-wife and my mother combined. I got some beautiful daughters. They act just like me. Stay tuned. But man, life showed up at my door. To the new people that's up in here, sobriety is not immunity from the vicissitudes of life. It's coming, okay? And what I did is I buried myself in service in here. I went out to work in Las Vegas for a company out there, and my sponsor Bob is in Vegas, and I had one of the best years of my life out there. I'm back home now. I'm with my little girls and my ex-wife, who had fallen gravely ill, and that's what triggered this whole thing, is doing well. I'm here today. I stand flat-footed in front of you and tell you that God has done for me what I couldn't do for myself. I am happy, joyous, and free, because that comes on the inside, not from what's going on the outside. No, when I was new, they gave me a tape of a man named Warren Chisholm Sr. And in that tape, Warren Chisholm Sr., 12th man in AA in Cleveland, got sober in 1939, made this statement that anyone who comes here who is willing to practice the principles and precepts of this program as outlined by the founders need never drink again, one day at a time. I ran to my sponsor, Bill. I said, Bill, how can he say that, never drink again? Bill said, it's simple, Kent. He said, here's why he can say that. It's because this is a spiritual program, and God doesn't fail. God doesn't fail. But I must participate in my own recovery. God will not do for me what I can do for myself. Those who do get, and those who don't. And it's just that simple. If I said anything helped anybody tonight, thank God, don't thank me. And if I didn't say nothing to help you tonight, guess what? It's more meetings tomorrow. God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. God could and would if he were sought. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then, good night.